It is my belief that in 2024, black people need to let go of the concept of a glass ceiling holding them back from whatever it is they want to do in this world. I know there's those out there that are going to disagree with me, but at least hear me out. That's what this video is about, sharing this perspective. And if you've listened to the video and you still think I've got it wrong, why not put your thoughts in the comment section? I try to read everything. So for those of you that don't know, my name is TJ. For the past year and a half, I've been living in Uganda, Africa, with my girlfriend, Medina. In the UK, my appearance means that I live my life as a black person. The perception is that I'm black. And the funny thing is that in Uganda, the perception is that I am white. So I'm at least of a unique position where, depending on where I go in the world, people think I'm different things. And I've had many opportunities to be around people that speak freely, assuming I'm one race or another. So maybe my perspective is at least worth taking into some consideration. Now, today marks a very big day in UK politics. Why? Because today is the day that a Nigerian black woman has taken the leadership position in the Conservative Party. For those of you that don't know, the Conservative Party is the Republicans of UK. They are politically positioned on the right. They are not DEI and woke. They are conservative by name and conservative by nature. How has a black woman been able to rise to the #1 position in her political party in a white country? I would say it's because whether there was barriers put in her way for being a woman or for being black or for being both, she decided to act as if those barriers didn't exist and was able to go beyond, to be the first, to do something spectacular, despite those barriers. I'm not saying the barriers aren't there. I'm not saying there's not racism. And I'm not saying there won't be people coming after you to put barriers in your way. But I believe if you want the best progress in life, you should just simply take accountability for what you can control. You can't control those that wish to put barriers in the way. And so your job is to become a hurdler of barriers, a breaker of barriers, someone that is resilient, strong, ethical, with the ability to outshine any barrier someone would want to put in front of you. Now, when it comes to black people, you've got slavery, you've got racism, you've got colonialism, you've got all these reasons that we can point to as to why we can't achieve the things we want to achieve, as to why we're behind, as to why we need them to change. But I've not yet come across a person that is a high performer, that is a high achiever, that has got to the top of their profession, like the new leader of the Conservative Party, that has a mentality of victimhood. I've not yet seen it. If you can show me one, let me know. But the people that tend to strive ahead, whether they got one hand tied behind their back or two, or whatever they've got holding them back, they move forward regardless. They act as if it's not there. And that is what I'm saying. We need to act as if there is no barrier. I'm going to play a clip from Vusi Thembekwayo. He's from South Africa. He has an investment fund. He's in the finance sector. You know, guys in those types of sectors, they do very well. The interesting thing about him is he was born within the apartheid system in South Africa, meaning there was legal and active laws against his race. Now let's look at the perspective, the mindset of a person who in their lifetime was by law oppressed because of their race. Let's check him out.
My view is that there must come a time when, as Africans, we draw a line on who we blame for our past, and we go from this point forward, we're going to talk about who's accountable for our future. And I have not yet.
And got to look in the mirror and you're accountable for your future.
And this is the point I was going to make. I have not yet seen a record of history where a people have built a future by obsessing over who pained them in the past and getting stuck there. Now, it's important to have those conversations. It's important to clear that up. It's important to have true reconciliation and nation building. This is examples South Africa brings to the rest of the world. Don't pretend that stuff doesn't exist. That's why we had the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Sit around the table, talk about who pained whom, who hurt whom, and why that matters. All of those things are important. And then there's a time when you draw the line in the sand and say, right, now how do we build for the future?
Let's go get them.
And recognize, and then lastly, one last thing. recognize that there's never been a time in history where a full population of a country started from the same point. I accept my disadvantage as a young black person growing up in a township in South Africa. I also accept that I'm not as disadvantaged as a young black female growing up in a rural part of the northern provinces who didn't go to a Model C school like I did. I accept that I have more privilege than her. And I accept that in the classes where I sat, if you were a young white person, you come from a different background and you were more privileged than I. I accept it. But then I draw a line in the sand and then I say, right, now that I've accepted it, let you and I go to the marketplace of competition because I'm going to show you. Let's write the exam and let's see who's going to get the better marks. Let's do the competition. And I think if we take on that spirit of conquest, of competition, of personal agency, this is how greatness is built and this is how countries achieve for greatness.
So you can see his mentality. He does acknowledge those issues. He does acknowledge the barriers that are placed in front of him. However, he said, let's write the test and see who comes out on top. Let's do the competition. Let's go for it. He's game. He's game for it regardless of whatever those barriers are. And that's the winning mentality we need as black people. Not only that, he's referencing it on an individual level, but he's referencing it on a country level, on a community level. This is not only what we need for the individual, but this is what we need for black people as a whole. This is how we get a better Africa. This is how we get a better black community. Once you take responsibility, you can start acting to improve the places where you have vulnerabilities. And then you can become robust and strong. And then when other people with other interests from other groups want to come to you, there's no place to corrupt. There's no place to destroy. In fact, what they have to do is come to the table and negotiate on our terms. There's so many things that Africa can offer to the world that we should force the world to negotiate on our terms, but we don't do it. Now, being someone from the UK, I've had so many things that have challenged my mind coming to Africa. I didn't come to Africa because of the glass ceiling that was in the UK. I came to Africa because I think Europe is failing. I think it's peaked. I think the same thing about America. I think America has peaked. I want to be in a rising place, a dynamic place. Yes, you need a frontier mentality to be in Africa, but it's a place of growth, and I want to get in stream with that growth. Having said that, there's a lot of things I learned from the UK that's not necessarily here on the continent. I want to highlight someone that I look up to called Dean Forbes. If you don't know him, he's one of the most successful black men in the UK. If you know about his story, he's been homeless. He's become a multi-millionaire, one of the most successful black men in the UK through the corporate route. And this is also a place where people say there's glass ceilings. They won't let me get the promotion. Let's listen to what he says and his mentality.
And then I found myself in jobs, I was talking about this morning, where I was seeing salespeople in tech companies making 100 grand a year or 150 grand a year. And at the time, that was like a mind-blowing amount of what people went to 9-to-5 jobs and legitimately made 150, sometimes 200 grand. And I was looking at these people thinking, but like they're not elite. There's nothing spectacular about them. So that was motivational, that I could see in touching distance those quantums of money. And then one thing led to another. I ended up running like half of an American company that we ended up selling to Oracle for 550 million euros. And at that point, I had shares in the company. And it just made this whole thing real for me. It made this whole thing of you can go to work, you can make a good salary, and in certain companies, in certain industries, if you had a degree of ownership, you could make like life-changing money. And once that happened, I couldn't get out of bed early enough. Like I didn't need any encouragement, because now I could see a little, path where I could do that again and again.
Did you hear what he said? He didn't say anything about glass ceilings or being held back. In fact, in the arena of business, he became a shark. He said, these people are nothing special. I'm the predator in here. I'm the one that's going to take it forward. And again, I've not yet come across a person that has a victim mentality, that has become super successful, that breaks barriers, that does amazing things. So what do we have? We have the example of the leader of the Conservative Party in the UK. We've got an example of a man that was born into apartheid in South Africa. And we've got an ex-homeless black man from London, all of whom have excelled massively. And then there's examples on the country level. There's Singapore, There's Poland, all of whom have been occupied. Poland by the Russians and communism, Singapore by the British, and Singapore are richer than the British now. And then you have a glimmer of hope when you see a country like Rwanda, who had their own internal struggle with their genocide that everyone knows about. And now they're doing great things, they're excelling. International business has noticed, and they're becoming their own Singapore of Africa. This is what we need. Let's do more of that. Let's put aside the victimhood. At least that's my perspective. Thank you so much for watching.